Hi guys, and welcome to episode 1 of this short Ymir martial tutorial series. So this is going to be either a 1, 2 or 3 episode tutorial series, just where I cover some of the more war-y and martial side of the game. My other tutorial series I'm covering just playing the game, and I've also done some advanced and beginners tips. This one I'm going to cover how you can set up armies, a bit more on militia and armies, the difference, how to take over other factions, how to defend against enemy invasions, and also talking about how the fighting is calculated with the stats of individual troops, and maybe some small tips here and there of how you can improve to either defend or take other nations out. So, getting started, in this video I'm going to cover some of the basic sort of stats and things you just need to understand so it can help you get better with the martial side. So in my capital, in my multiplayer game, Redwood, I have started a fort, but I'm not talking about this in this episode. This is where I'm going to be doing all my my military stuff. So, if you come up here to formations, this is where you deal with all your military. I've got militia here. They've got the little house icon telling you that these are stuck to this territory. And then I've got an army here who can move freely about. So I've clicked on this army, and this has 65 units. So I'm just going to explain everything in this bit for now. So, firstly, you have the name of the army. We have the the nation they're from, because actually other people's armies can encamp in your cities if you have a rites of passage. So this is just saying this is my nation, Hoggum, and their county of Castell, so that's me. Each army costs 5 state power. It doesn't matter how many troops are in the army. Every single time you create a new army formation, it costs 5 state power. So if we come up here to government, I'm going to be in state power, and we can see I've got 12 state power, and maintenance of formations, so I've got 4 army formations, so it's costing me 20 state power. This is really important because you don't want to have too many armies. You maybe want to have several armies, but they've got tons of troops in them, rather than lots of smaller armies, because it's cheaper for state power. So, back to this menu. We've also then got their home. This is really important. The home of the army is where they source their troops from, and it's where they gain maximum action point regeneration. So, I'll talk about this in a bit later, but when you move your army around, use up these action points. You start with 100, and when you go over different terrains and you move large distances, you use up action points. The harsher the terrain, so mountains, hills, swamps, they use up more action points, and obviously the further you move, the more action points it uses up. So, if you can see here, the plus 31 is saying that when in your home territory, the home city where that army is recruited from, you'll get 31 action points. And I think that's per hour? Yeah, per hour. So it doesn't run on the same trade cycle of 90 minutes in a multiplayer game. So more things we've got here. We've got the military strength of the formation. If you've played any Paradox games, or maybe even like the Total War series, where it has the balance of power sort of thing, it's sort of like that. It's a rough estimate of how strong the army is. It's basically saying if this 1700 power army went up against a 100 power army, it's almost guaranteed to win. But if you have a 2000 power army up against another 2000 power army, you can see that there's many other factors that take place. So that's just a rough estimate of how good it is. Just because it's higher number doesn't mean you're guaranteed to win. It's just letting you know that this is quite a strong army or not a very strong army. Here simply is the number of pigs we have in the formation. So basically 65 porcos is saying that there's 65 jobs we're taking up. So if we come up to here, where we can see there's 324 employed, that we've taken 64 from that pool, because these are all recruited from Redwood. And finally, on this page, there is the maintenance. So this army is costing me 62 coins per tick. So if we come up to the money, you can see 216 gold coins is being spent on my formations overall in my nation. So that's some of the very basics of the armies. Militia are, think of them as army units that are static to the territory you recruit them from, and the troops aren't full-time soldiers. So when you recruit new militia, it simply sets aside equipment that your own residents can use in a time of need, and also you paying for training as well. So if you recruit 50 militia units, like I've got here, 50 longbowmen, those 50 longbowmen aren't always there, and in fact they don't actually use up any extra jobs. So whereas the 60 army troops are taken from the employed, the 50 longbowmen still have a normal job. So longbowmen are great in that, sorry, not longbowmen, but militia are great in that aspect. Also, militia costs much less maintenance. You can see my other army cost me 60, and it did have more troops, but this one's only costing me 18. So it's way, way better. Finally, militia are great at defense, because they're always in the territory. I know that may sound a bit silly, like, well, armies can always be in the territory, but armies in a time of war, you're going to want to move them around, maybe to go to your more important settlements, maybe to attack the enemy. Militia, you know for a fact they're always going to be in the territory, so they're a very good way of defense. So you may be asking, why would I want really a defensive army at all and not just have lots of militia? That's the big problem with militia, is that the more militia you have, the higher the loyalty penalty you receive. So if we come over to here, and we come over to loyalty, this is in the territory menu, we can actually see in authority, where is it? Local garrison is providing minus 34 loyalty to this this territory. The more militia you have, the more of a negative loyalty debuff you face. And the game does it in a realistic way. It's saying that the more militia you have, the more likely it is your peasants want to revolt, because they've got more training and more access to equipment, that it would be easier for them to revolt. So if you have too many militia and you don't have anything to stop that loyalty debuff, your settlement will revolt. And how it works is half of your militia go to the revolt and the other half stay and fight. So if you have a revolt and you have a big militia, you'll lose half of it as they come and actually help the residents to take over your city. So that is actually why you do want a defensive army. If you come back to here, go to loyalty again, we can see that my state troops, this is my army present in this territory, is giving a plus 86 loyalty bonus. So if I move this army out, you'll see it will drop from being 84, it will go to negative, and I will revolt. So the army being here is really important, and that's one way that I'll come to later with wars, but you can win wars by simply forcing the enemy to have revolts. Okay, so that's the basics of the armies. The rest of this video, I'm going to cover how the armies actually work, like the stats behind them. So this gives you a better idea of what troops to get and how the troops are actually working. So I'm going to come over to Redwood Rangers, and we've got the different types of troops. We've got 30 spear pigs, 20 longbow pigs, 10 axe pigs, and we've got 5 horse pigs. So we've got a nice range here. We've got some good range units, we've got some good damage dealing units, we've got good just frontline all round units, and then we've got some really expensive but good cavalry units. So I'm going to come over to here to recruit a new troop, and I'm going to explain what the things in here mean. So let's come over to melee units, and I'll go over to warrior because this is the starting unit you get. So there's quite a lot on this page. I'll cover some of the basic stuff first. Up here, this is saying that it requires 1 working porco to fulfill this job. This is the maintenance per unit. This is how much gold it costs to recruit the unit. And this is the resources it costs per unit. So that's per unit. At the bottom here, we have overall. So if I wanted 20 warriors, it's going to cost me 12 upkeep, 20 pigs, 40 gold, as a unique payment, and 20 wood. So that's the basic stuff out of the way. Now we have the more advanced features. This is the storage capacity per unit. So that means that if we had 20 warriors, we would get 60 storage capacity as the army. So even though there is the carrier units, I feel it's better just to build up a bigger army and use them as your couriers. But you could also put carriers in the army as well. Next, you have pillage. This, quite simply, like it says, is how good the unit is at sacking and raiding other settlements. So not necessarily invading and taking them over, but just going into the settlements, burning the buildings down, stealing resources. That only matters if it's going to be an offensive army. Here we have the reach. The reach is simply the distance that the army can attack other units from. So if we come over to spear pigs, reach is one of their major things. Obviously they've got a long spear. The reach is what makes them so good at dealing with stuff like cavalry or attacking the enemy from a distance. This is melee damage. So the fist is melee damage, and that is simply how much damage the enemy receives if they get hit. This is melee skill, and this is the ability to hit. So melee damage is how much damage the enemy takes. Melee skill is the chance of the enemy to be hit. So if we come to axe pigs, they've got great melee damage and melee skill, but they have less reach. Spear pigs have less of both, but they have more reach. So you can sort of see how the different units differ. So that's why I said the axe pigs are good damage dealers. Next we have mass. So the mass is the charge bonus. So if we look at cavalry, cavalry have insanely good mass. That's the whole point. 600 mass. So cavalry have 6 times the mass of one spear pig. So yeah, mass is to do with charging, and it's the initial upfront charge bonus or charge damage given to the enemy when you attack. This is speed. So that movement / speed is simply how good the unit is on the world map to move around. It also does affect speed in combat, but you want to really think of it as how quickly that unit moves around on the world map. This is toughness. So these two up here are defensive skills with armor and toughness. So armor is actually the chance to sort of deflect / not receiving damage. So if an attack does actually go through, let's say this melee damage does hit you because they have enough melee skill, the armor would then block some of that damage. Toughness is your ability to actually not take any damage at all. So you could think of it almost as like dodging. In some games, the difference between dodging and blocking, it's that sort of thing. So spear pigs, they have good armor and toughness, whereas the axe pigs, they have worse, but then they have the trade-off with damage. So that's a bit of the basics on the melee troops. There is then range units. So range units, this is all the same, and the melee stuff is the same, but then you just got the combination of range damage, range skill, and range. Range, however, is really, really important for range units, quite obviously, because they are a ranged unit. So we can see here the rock throwers have a range of 4. These spearmen have a range of 3.5, so where the rock throwers can start throwing, the spearmen are almost in distance to attack them already. Longbow pigs, 26 range. This is what I'm going to come on to in my next video, the use of range to help you win or win a defensive battle or an offensive battle. Really, really crucial. So I'm going to end the video there. It's just been a relatively shorter video, just looking at some of the basic stats, how they're calculated, difference between armies and militias. One last thing I will quickly cover is the fact, try and fill your formations. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I have heard somewhere that actually filling formations gives you maybe a slight bonus. So these 10 spear pigs, if I fill them all the way up to 20, they'd obviously double their strength because I've got double the members, but they'd also get a small bonus as well. I'm not entirely sure on that one though. But yeah, I'm going to end the video there. In the next videos, I'm going to cover defense, so how to defend your nation, looking at forts, and the different types of fort buildings. And then I'm also going to do an offensive war video, looking at maybe how you can try and take over another nation, and some tips and tricks to do that. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the other videos.